Good.
This is The Extra Point, an Arizona's Family Originals podcast, sponsored by your Phoenix Suns.
Well, let's talk Phoenix Suns. So I have been out now about 2 weeks back in the saddle, battling an eye injury, so hence the patch. We can talk like a pirate. I know my next guest is going to appreciate that. Let's bring him in, the one, the only Doug Franz, the only man who can, I don't think you can take me seriously wearing a patch, but it's certainly good conversation. Always a good conversation with you. How are you?
I am wonderful. I think you're a gamer. It shows your toughness that you're coming to work with the patch.
Well, yeah, April, after 2 weeks in the house is like, yeah, you got to get out of here. And we're working our way back up slowly. I'm having some problems with lights. It's a retinal issue, hopefully to be resolved by the golf tournament. Do you do any golf tournament? Like what's your current deal? You're everywhere now. You're riding e-bikes. You're covering the Sun Devils all over the place. You and Danny White are hanging out. What's your plan for the Phoenix Open in the spring here?
I'll do whatever the Open wants. I have completely turned my attention to about the third weekend of March, where the main sponsor of Doug Franz Unplugged is Whirlwind Golf Club, and they're hosting the LPGA Ford Championship. And my number two sponsor is Santan Ford, and they are all over it. Tim Hovick actually kind of pushed the LPGA into how much money do you want in order for me to have an impressive tournament. And he did all the driving force to get it done. So I can't wait. I don't know if you have time, but I'd like you to come out and join us. We're going to play. Well, I don't know where the ladies professionals play. I think they normally play right around the blue tees for a men's course. And so not quite the tips for really good guys, but better than your average, male is where they play. So we're going to play out there and test ourselves at that tee box. So we'll know when we have our scores in the 90s and they're in the 70s, just the level of that big of a gap.
Well, and I am totally down with that. But just for your knowledge, I was set up to play in the Fiesta Bowl golf tournament, had a retinal issue. Was set up to play over at Phoenix Country Club, and then had another issue. Had to lay on my side for a week, and then was set up to play in TBC Scottsdale in January, and then had to go on my face for a week. So I'm sure the audience.
I am totally confident that you could beat me with one eye tied behind your back.
Every time I try to play golf, I have to have some sort of eye procedure. So,
man.
That's just, hey man, here's to new beginnings in 2025 and good things always happen.
Good luck battling back. I'm sorry to suck up to you, but this city needs you. You are really good at what you do. We have a lot of dumpster fires in the media, and you're one of the good people, and there's just not a lot of good people left. So good luck getting back.
Well, that means the world, Doug. So let's dive right into it because the feeling is mutual. Let's chop it up and let's argue. Let's start with this. If a player had been suspended for not getting on a team flight and was his second suspension by that team, would you trade for
him? My answers are between, no and blank no, depending on the family level of the podcast. However, if his name is Jimmy Butler, the answer is yes. So I would make a 1% difference, but I would jump his butt before he got here. It's a great question. I think Jimmy Butler, there are stories about him in 2020 in which people would call security on his room in the COVID bubble because there was too much noise in his room. And come to find out he was dribbling and doing his own drills when they had that made up 72-hour quarantine before you were allowed to come out of your room. And he was in there doing all kinds of workouts. The guy is a workaholic. He's one of my favorite players in the league. So yes, he can dramatically help the Suns, but he deserves to get ripped. There is nothing more unprofessional than the crap he is pulling right now. Your teammates don't have anything to do with your money. Spoelstra has nothing to do with it. Do your job. You're being paid over $45 million to play basketball, and you have a problem with living in a state with no income tax on a beach. I mean, let's really think about this for a second. So the answer is still yes, but I'm upset about it. I think it's wrong what he's doing.
There was so much made of Kevin Durant and Draymond Green and the friction there. Yeah. How do you feel like Jimmy Butler's personality is going to mesh with Kevin Durant on the Phoenix Suns?
Here's the best answer anyone's ever given you, Mark. I don't care. I think both of them are at a point in their careers where they need to wake up. Kevin Durant was instrumental in winning that championship with those championships with Golden State. At the same time, he only has championships when he's with Steph Curry. At some point, quit being a point stat stuffer, go back to actually playing some real defense. And I don't care if he's uncomfortable. This team has never performed to expectations once he got here. He needs to accept that. And I don't know what happened to Devin Booker either. When Devin Booker was towing around with Chris Paul, it was incredible. The late, great, fantastic human being Al McCoy told me that Chris Paul was the greatest leader in the history of the Suns. Now, I don't know about you, but when everybody else says history of the Suns, I admit I kind of ignore them or I'll mouth off because I think I know the history of the Suns pretty well. When Al McCoy says it, you're like, okay, Al. So with what that level of leadership was, look at how great Booker was in his complete game, not just scoring under Chris Paul. This isn't the same Devin Booker. He can still score, but Mark, we need Olympic Book. We need the Paris version of Devin Booker right now, who's willing to do everything. And I kind of feel like all of them would get together and realize we haven't accomplished anything when we're alone. The three of us need to figure it out together. And that's why I kind of like the idea of Jimmy Butler.
Do you think that there's enough time to figure it out if Jimmy Butler does not get here until the February 6th trading deadline and doesn't make his debut until maybe February the 8th, the same day of the Phoenix Open's third round on right here on Arizona's Family? We have a post-game show. We could end up having Jimmy Butler making his debut that night. Literally, my eye has to be right by that day because that could be a crazy one.
Wow. First of all, nice job on knowing your calendar that far in advance. I've
been sitting on my face for 2 weeks. So all I've been doing has been like, what's the next couple of weeks look like? When can I get back? Go ahead. Yeah.
It's a great question. And my answer is more like, what's the alternative? The specific answer to your question is I don't think so. I don't think there's enough time. It does take a while. And it was just like when KD got here. It was okay, we're going to use the regular season to build things up. And then it was a disaster. And all of a sudden you look up and you're on 3 coaches in 3 years. That's not good. So there's a problem here. But the alternative is to do nothing. And that's not working. We know doing nothing doesn't work. We don't know if bringing in Jimmy Butler does. So my opinion would be, I don't think so. That's a big, hard-hitting opinion, but I'd rather try it than not try it.
No, absolutely. And everybody who says the Suns, they mortgage the future in the 2031 first round pick, and maybe they just traded out to Danny Ainge, and he just took your lunch money. And Danny Ainge, I think, wins every single trade that he makes. So I do sort of feel, that's we'll see in 2031. But there's the Suns, they're built to win now. They want to win now. And I think tearing this thing down does more damage to the fan base and the brand than trying to go all in.
I love where you're going. I would ask the simple question. Are you ready to move on from James Jones? He crushed the 2024 draft. Give him all the credit in the world. But he's the same guy that looked us straight in the face and said, Jalen Smith is better than Tyrese Halliburton. Okay. And some of us in town, namely me, were screaming bloody murder about how bad I wanted Tyrese Halliburton. So when you talk about making moves and mortgaging the future, I say that doesn't bother me because I don't trust a future if James Jones is running the draft. He's about 1 for 8 in running drafts. So why not trade draft picks? You're right. If this team is either built to win now or it's our only option. So I'm okay with the tear it down model as long as we have somebody else in charge of the reconstruction.
Interesting. Now, would you keep Booker here for the tear it down model if that had to happen? If, say, we get through this year's playoffs and you're like, clearly this is not working again, where would you start
Could you say that again?
Oh, sorry, that was Siri. Sorry. I only got one eye here. Where
Wait,
would
your
you
Siri is a man?
Yes. Yeah. What do you have?
Well, I have the typical woman. Like I've never floated around and changed my settings.
I really want.
Like you actually spend time with your. You have been bored.
I really want either McConaughey or I want Samuel L. Jackson. Those are my two goals. They have to figure that out. But yeah, as we figure out the Suns here, if this doesn't work, what would the path be to build again? How many years you feel like we're looking at?
It takes a while, and it also depends on how good you are at the draft. I mean, if you're good at the draft, it's not that terrible. Look at Oklahoma City and how quickly they've been able to do it. So it depends on how many resources are you putting into scouting and doing everything correctly in the draft. You've got to work really hard at it. Specifically to your question before Siri interrupted you, and that would be, yes, I would keep Devin Booker. Listen, a lot of teams have made mistakes keeping players too long. I hate to say it. Even though they're human beings, they are commodities. But look at the joy all of us have, even if we don't have a hockey team, in saying Shane Doan is ours. Right. Irrelevant of how bad the Cardinals franchise has been run almost since the day it got here. We get to say we have Larry Fitzgerald. No matter what happens, we have Fitz. I put Booker in that category. Don't you kind of wish, God bless Christian Walker, but don't you wish that we were celebrating Paul Goldschmidt retiring as a Diamondback and he had never left? Randy Johnson got his 300th win as a Giant. Now, it's still, yes, he was an Expo, he was a Mariner, he was an Astro, he did other things, but he became ours, and yet we don't get to celebrate those guys. I think Booker is in that class, so I would keep Booker, and I would build not necessarily around him as he gets older, but I want the rookies to learn from a guy that plays that hard and plays that much and still works on his game to that level.
Right. And hopefully it doesn't get to that point. Hopefully before February 6th, we will have some type of, monster deal where you can see a roadmap to the future. But I mean, have you done the trade machine thing? Have you gone down that rabbit hole? Are we looking at like some 5-team deal here where, we end up with a couple different guys, Beal and Nurkic probably gone as well. Grayson Allen, would you part with him? If you had to.
I don't want to. I would part with just about anybody to get rid of Bradley Beal, but I don't want to get rid of Grayson Allen. I love to trumpet every time I'm right, but let me stand on the table and say I couldn't have been a bigger buffoon in my feelings of Grayson Allen before he got here and after he got here. I don't think there's a human being I've been more wrong about than Grayson Allen. What a class guy, hardworking guy. And I'll say it, I don't know if this is horrible to say, I thought the guy was a punk. I couldn't stand him at Duke. I couldn't stand him in Milwaukee. Wherever he went, I thought bad things happen, and I was dead wrong. So I don't want to lose that guy. I think he creates fantastic space, and he's one of the few guys I feel like plays hard every single night. So I'd love to keep Grayson. I haven't flirted around with the machine, and you'll never guess why. I don't believe anybody wants Bradley Beal unless they're getting a ton with it. So the trade machine works straight up Jimmy Butler for Bradley Beal. But Miami, I don't see in a million years would be interested in that, even if they get 3 first-round picks. I think they're going to want more. And once you say more, there is no more, Mark, until you get team 3, team 4, team 5. And by that point, now we're just grabbing straws and wasting our time because we have no idea who would jump in or jump out. The one tiny thing would be, I bet the Bulls are involved. No matter how many teams are involved, you've got to get Bradley Beal to waive his no trade clause. I don't know how many teams he would do that for. Probably anything to do with the Lakers, the Clippers, I bet he would. But he used to have a Southern California home. When he signed here, he had an official home here, but he's from the Midwest, so I could see him accepting the Bulls.
Interesting. Now, Nurkic, it seems like his value has absolutely just crashed. What would you expect to get back for a trade for the Suns' big man?
I think you could get a 3rd-round pick. Very good on your part.
Yeah. When did they go away from the 3rd round of the? I remember watching on TBS.
It was in the mid-90s. We lost the 3rd round.
Right.
It's a 2-round draft.
Right.
I think there's nothing there. I don't think anybody can. Nurkic has done this to himself. He had value when he came here, but I don't know what happened. I don't know why he chose to check out mentally, but the work ethic is just not there during the game. You know, I'm not practicing with the guys. I don't have access to watch practice. So I don't know if he works unbelievably hard in practice and it's just not translating to the games. But when you watch him during the games, he does the DeAndre Ayton trick. And if you don't know what that is, when a shot goes up, Ayton used to look at the rim and he never looked at his own guy. So he had no idea where his guy was by the time the ball hit the backboard or hit the rim. And Nurkic does the same thing. He's late to react. He's slow to recognize what the offense is doing. I don't think he has much value other than a contract that somebody will have to take. So if the Suns can move Nurkic, God bless Matt Ishbia.
Yeah, and I do think moving things, that they're going to continue to move guys. I mean, you go back to here. Let me ask you this: going back to before the Kevin Durant trade, before any of that, would they have been better off just to keep Chris Paul and DeAndre Ayton and just move forward, knowing what we know about Bradley Beal now?
Mm-hmm. It's one of the greatest questions ever. I'm going to say no. Now, first of all, let me be clear. When the KD trade happened, my opinion was I love it without the draft picks or with Cam or Mikal Bridges, not both. So I didn't love the trade. And then I admit, Mark, and after it happened, I was like, yeah, we got KD. Like, I didn't like it. The logic in me is, hey, we got KD. But it's just not working. DeAndre Ayton had to go because the rest of the team couldn't take it anymore. A lot of people don't understand stats. If I throw you the ball, Mark, and with you know, God bless your face right now, but if it hits you in the face and the other team takes the ball, it's my turnover because you never caught it. DeAndre Ayton was a machine to give turnovers to Booker and everybody else, and the players were sick of it. And then his aloofness, it just wasn't working. So he had to go. Chris Paul, that's the toughest enigma in basketball. Why do you want to keep a guy that you can guarantee on the souls of your children will be hurt come playoff time? Yet your team doesn't have a leader. Right. Your team doesn't have a focus. They're not good enough without him, and he won't be there when you need him. That's the life of Chris Paul. So I'm kind of forced to say, yes, it was the right move at the time, but now looking back, I don't like what I'm seeing with Bradley Beal, so it's almost like, can we get lucky and have a healthy Chris Paul once?
And you know, and I think I absolutely, I would put Chris Paul in the Ring of Honor. I would have done it his first game back here with Golden State, Christmas of last year, even while he's playing for another team. I think he has meant that much to the franchise, getting it to the finals after that decade that we had to watch of just despair here of pro basketball in the desert. When it comes to how this team is going to look, last question about the Suns. I think it's based on what they did last year and basically overhauling the entire bench at the trading deadline. Remember Keita Bates, Diop, and Yuta Watanabe, and those guys were just gone. I mean, like the whole bench was gone. Chimezi Metu, see if you can name some more. I think this team is going to look drastically different on February 7th. What do you think? Not just Jimmy Butler.
Yeah. Well, obviously there's something with Coach Bud and Bol because Bol does score every now and then when he's in, and he's never in, and he got some playing time under Vogel. So you have to assume he's gone because for whatever reason, Budenholzer just doesn't see the light with him. I don't know about anybody else because a lot of other guys are playing. The two rookies are fantastic draft picks. You're not going to move them. You've got to be reasonably impressed with O'Neal, and he gets a ton of playing time, so you know the head coach likes him, so you're good there. And then with the rest of the group, you know, maybe, but they're already doing fine when they go 7 or 8 deep. So if they do anything, it would kind of shock me if the bench is impactful. To me, it's Jimmy Butler or a lot of small stuff.
Interesting. Well, do we agree it's going to happen though? Like you don't go get 3 first-round picks for 31. Okay. Yes. Agree.
And I think, listen, Matt Ishbia, I've never had a beer with him, so I don't want to act like I know him. I say God bless him. I mean, no matter how angry we get at our sons, it's not the Sarver era. So we're still better off where we were. And Ishbia seems like the kind of guy that he either gets his way now or he convinces you he gets his way later. Yeah. And it's no doubt he wants Jimmy Butler, and he's just not the kind of guy that fails at getting what he wants.
Right. And he said that in news conferences. He's going to keep trying. And he said last year at the end of his season news conference, the one that came off a little awkward to national media.
That was a bad presser.
It was, but as they explain themselves, they're not worried about the 7th grader right now. That's going to be the 2031.
And you know what? I would like to block that thinking, because I know it's funny to say that, hey, we're not a team of 13-year-olds, but you can't sustain success without understanding how the draft works. Remember, you had Ryan McDonough brought us Devin Booker. Out of all the bad things Ryan may or may not have done, we got Booker from the draft and could have had Tyrese Halliburton from the draft. How good would that combination have been able to work over the years? So I don't like their attitude about the draft. I get it now. Once you've already gone down this sinkhole, it's dumb to kind of say, well, never mind. You might as well finish it out. But I think they're missing out on sustainable success if they don't start embracing the draft.
Imagine if they would have had Luka too, instead of DeAndre Ayton.
You're 100%
and
right.
Mikal Bridges. That's a pretty good starting four. Who'd be the
I was
fifth?
I was an Ayton guy until like an hour before the draft, and then I started seeing like real European basketball and some of the things Luka did, and then I was like, okay, I still like DeAndre Ayton, but this Luka guy is pretty good. Now you mentioned Bridges. There's an old story. Keep this between you and I.
Okay. Yes. Is this on your podcast or my podcast? Which one is this?
Yeah, you can cut it out. You can cut it off of the extra point, and I'm going to use it. But there's an old story that says Ryan McDonough was angling to get Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and was trumped by the owner, Robert Sarver, and he demanded Mikal Bridges. Now, all of us love Mikal Bridges.
Absolutely.
And so I can't say either of them are wrong, but wow. I was a big Shai Gilgeous-Alexander coming out, and I know that Ryan McDonough was too.
And you paired him with Jalen Williams at Perry, who was about my height when he left high school. He went to Santa Clara, and now he's one of the forces in the NBA. It's been cool to see what's happening in Oklahoma City. They've done it with draft picks, and you're like,
yes,
okay,
they have.
Okay, Utah. Well, 2031 is just around the corner. Before you get out of here, do want to ask you two more things about local sports. Baseball wise, do the Diamondbacks, does their pitching staff excite you after that was supposed to be the strength of the team last year? Didn't really pan out. They got a new pitching coach. How can they compete with the Dodgers this year, Doug?
I want to be your insider. I want to sound really important. However, you had me on second weekend of the NCAA tournament on CBS 5 Arizona's Family at the time Jordan Montgomery was signed, and I said, quote, they just nailed the best pitching staff in baseball. So now I'm trying to come back and re-earn my credibility because I couldn't have been more wrong last year. Never saw Merrill Kelly becoming average, and certainly didn't see Jordan Montgomery becoming a black hole. So now that you asked it, until Sasaki signed with the Dodgers, I thought the Diamondbacks had the best rotation in baseball, and now I'll say they have the second best rotation in baseball. I love the Burns signing, and I would like us to all put the money where the mouth is of the owner. You were able to hear him sit there and tell all of us that we put all of our money right back into the franchise. Well, I would like the fans to say, okay, Ken Kendrick, I'm going to buy season tickets to 2025. Right. We're going to start having 25,000 people at day games and start having 35,000 people on a rare Tuesday night out of nowhere, because they've gone all in too. Corbin Burns is a fantastic signing. And why do I say this? To re-sign Zach Gallen for 2026, to make sure the money is coming in. And I think Ken Kendrick has earned it. Now, I'm only talking about this year, but I think this is a fantastic team. The Dodgers are still nuts and stupid, and baseball's still dumb to not have a cap of some kind. So fine, they win the division. But just like 2023, who cares who wins the division? You get into the postseason with that pitching rotation, I have no problem picking the Diamondbacks to beat most of the teams in the National League in a best of 3, best of 5, or best of 7.
Interesting. See how the offense, if it picks up where it left off as well. Last question for you. How many teams do you think we get in here locally to March Madness, and do they make any noise?
Grand Canyon is right now is the second best team in the WAC, and they're a proven tournament team. So it's a good bet to say they win the WAC, but they have zero chance of getting in as an at-large. So it's kind of a 50-50 thing with them. U of A, I think they've started off well enough that they only need a couple more wins. The crazy thing about the Big 12 and the SEC both, every night is a quad 1 opportunity.
Right.
So you could easily have a below 500 record and still make it. And ASU and U of A did a fantastic job in non-conference scheduling, which is going to boost them that much more. I think the fulcrum game of the season was ASU at West Virginia. That was an enormous win because the rest of the schedule, other than U of A, is kind of easy until you have a game against Houston, notwithstanding you got to get through Saturday. If you pull the upset off of Iowa State coming up on Saturday, I really like the answer to your question being 2, that 2 of the 3 get in.
Interesting. Well, we'll be here to chronicle it. We hope to have you back in studio to talk to us as well, but you are the most busy man right now in show business. So, take care of your retinas.
Thank you.
Program your phone so Siri doesn't go off in the middle of the podcast, and we'll be listening. Tell us as we get out of here when we can hear you and where we can see you next.
Oh, you're a nice man. It's Doug Franz Unplugged, and the show is presented by Whirlwind Golf Club at Wild Horse Pass, which is actually the home of the LPGA Ford Championship. What you do is you can either just search Doug Franz Unplugged or just go to Spotify, go to Apple, and then load it up. And then when you're there, hit the search button, and then please subscribe, please download, please listen, and it'll drop on your phone by 6 o'clock every morning, because I figured everybody was used to hearing me every morning, so I stay up all night after I watch the games and then do a show. So then I go to bed about 5:30 in the morning, and it's on your phone when I go to bed and you get up.
Well, the dog and I listen every morning, and we hope you get some sleep between now and March Madness.
Oh, thank you. Get fired up. I'm excited.
This is The Extra Point, an Arizona's Family Originals podcast, sponsored by your Phoenix Suns.